Welcome to the Empowered Birth series, where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered, true, natural birth. And today's topic is actually going a little bit away from birth and into your postpartum. If you are planning a true natural birth, then chances are you're also looking to breastfeed, right? Well, as I said in previous videos about how when you sign up for emails or go into the mom groups, you can have your confidences undermined, the same can be said when you are trying to breastfeed. In fact, number 18 on my list of the 26 things that you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth is to not sign up for the mom packages. I'm talking about those little freebies that you get when you go into stores for maybe maternity wear, or maybe you are signing up for a baby registry. There are so many stores that offer these awesome new mom packages, and it sounds like a great idea. But let me just tell you, when I was a first-time mom, I fell into this trap too. In fact, as a first-time mom, I was excited. Free stuff? Who can pass that up, right? But here's the thing about psychology, specifically social psychology and the psychology of selling, is that nothing free is actually free. There's always something in it. Now, maybe they are being altruistic, but if they're asking for your email and your address and your information in return, no, it's not the same thing as if some benevolent mom is out on Facebook and she says, hey, I've got all this free stuff. I've got samples of formula. I don't use formula. People gave it to me. Just take it off my hands. Here you go. Versus the one who's like, we've got free samples of things. We've got free baby stuff. And all you have to do is give us your personal information. What are they going to use that personal information for? Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are just not going to do this in an altruistic way. They have an ulterior motive. Go check out my previous video where I told you about what you want to avoid when you're signing up for the emails and why you need to be discerning about giving out your name and email. I know it's controversial of me to say that. After all, I do have an email newsletter. I do have digital products available. I am a coach. At the same time, I want you to be investing in yourself. And I'm going to be talking more about that in this video as well, of why that's important. But the fact is that with the empowered birth method and with the empowered mom philosophy is that you don't need to just be trusting other people to tell you what to do. You are your own best expert. And the empowered birth philosophy is really we aim for a true natural birth and we pull back only as much as we need. We only pull in information that's going to allow us to get what we want. We do not pull in information that's going to put us into the fear traps or information overwhelm. We work through our fears. We deactivate our triggers so that they can't push the buttons on us. So the medical system is based on this idea of you not being the expert, and don't worry your pretty little head over it. And if you want to know more about how we got into that mess, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage is one of my absolute favorite books for going into the her story. You can also get a little bit more out of Millie Hill's book, Give Birth Like a Feminist. And of course, I reflect this a lot in my teaching because not only am I a strong birth advocate and childbirth educator, and I have a passion for birth, I also have a passion for social psychology. In fact, that's where I originally started. I was just a young college student. I never had any intentions of ever giving birth naturally because I'd been scared out of it. And then what happened is that when I became pregnant, I noticed the social psychology that was going on in front of me when it came to every single one of my choices being undermined. Every single person trying to chip away at my confidence. Every single person trying to tell me, and society telling me, and these mom packages even saying it in a message of, you don't know what you're doing. We're just going to give you things. We're going to bombard you with this information, and you're just supposed to follow it. So there's a lot of mom groups out there that say, hey, get those new mom packages because they give the free samples of formula, and you might need that because breastfeeding might not work. And this is where the problems happen. So one of the reasons why you don't want to do this is, again, it's going to affect your mindset, which is also going to affect your education, particularly if you're giving out your email when you're signing up for these new mom packages, which typically you give out your email, right? Now you're on an email list. Go check out that video I did on emails, because then that's going to help you to understand what's really going on. See, I'm going to give it to you because, again, with the empowered birth method and everything I teach, it's all about you becoming your own best expert and then filtering everything through your lens, not the lens that society wants you to do. Because we have been taught what to think, not how to think. And that then leads to the natural birth traps. And again, I talk about this inside my book, Your Empowered Birth, which is available on Amazon. You can also just go into the YouTube playlist and go and get the whole book, listen to it. I read it out to you. So understanding, first of all, that you are absorbing this information. You are absorbing all of this information, but you're also absorbing stuff. When you sign up for these new mom packages, it's going to undermine your confidence to breastfeed. It's also going to add clutter to your life that you don't actually need. And it's going to reinforce this idea that you're going to need these baby gadgets, or you're going to need extra help in breastfeeding, which then is also going to undermine your confidence and make you more likely to purchase more of those baby things in the future, as opposed to never giving you that sample in the first place. So again, if you're getting a sample of something, you're trying it, right? You're trying it, and then you're like, maybe this is something I need. Instead of really recognizing that what they've done is they've done the foot in the door technique, which is, again, a social psychology term that basically means they got you to say yes to this little thing, and then in the future, you're going to feel more likely obligated to give them something else in the future because they gave you something free. So now there's an energetic exchange happening. So you need to be careful when you're taking any support from somebody. Are there strings attached? So as I said, I'm going to go into the 3 things that you really need to understand about how these new mom packages undermine your breastfeeding. And I'm also going to share how I avoided that, because I myself ended up breastfeeding my kids each for 2.5 years. I exclusively breastfed. I barely pumped any milk. If I did pump it, usually it went in the freezer, and then I donated that milk to a friend who happened to have like insufficient glandular tissue. Like, this was an actual condition. She had done everything possible to try to breastfeed, and she just didn't have the breast tissue to do it. And she didn't have the glands to do it, so she needed to supplement. She was still breastfeeding, however, she did need to supplement. And she'd rather supplement with breast milk mostly than supplement with formula. So she still had extra breast milk because I myself found out that I have an oversupply of milk. So I have an abundance of milk. And in those first 6 weeks, oh, my cups runneth over. And I have so much milk, and my baby's not drinking that extra milk. So I needed to pump it out just to get my baby to latch. So in those first few weeks, I had a freezer full of milk every single day, and she'd come in and get it. So recognizing that even if you do need to supplement, you can also see maybe there's a friend around who has an abundance of milk. There are ways to get more breast milk. And this is something that's not advertised because, of course, the formula companies want you to buy their formula, but it's expensive. And even if you have the means and the money, Would you rather invest in something else, like maybe your child's education, your child's well-being, yourself, maybe your family? Maybe you want to get some extra support from a human rather than investing it in this formula that was basically chipping away at your breastfeeding journey to then lead to that. So, as I said, I beat this system. And I did it because I was able to see what was going on with the social psychology. If you do want to know more about that, though, I would suggest you also check out Dr. Jack Newman's Guide to Breastfeeding. Particularly, Chapter 3 is really helpful. It's talking about the advertising and the sale of formula and promotion of it, and how certain things in our culture have reinforced this idea of formula. And this also goes back into her story and why things started to come up this way. We turned into a very consumer-based society, and women were told that they'd be free of their babies and they'd be free of their bodies if they switched to bottles. So there was a time when women thought that this was a revolution. And really what it is it's now caused us to become dependent on formula. But then what happens is that formula goes up in price. And now you're stuck paying that because your breastfeeding has been undermined. So even though I still believe that breastfeeding is like the best milk for the baby, and people will still argue and say fed is best, the fact is that yes, formula does have its place. If you cannot breastfeed for whatever reason, it is there for you. However, our birth culture and our society and our culture for motherhood is very much based on this idea of outside support, and you don't know anything, and you are not your own best expert, and you can't trust your body, and your body is broken and defective, and don't expect that things are going to work out for you. And these new mom packages reinforce that. So how do they do that? Okay, so number one, how they do that is by giving you formula coupons and formula samples. So when you are looking at these new mom packages, and I signed up for every single one that I could get my hands on because I liked free stuff. And I was a little bit of a shopaholic when I was younger. And the idea of getting to go to different stores and get their free coupons and the free stuff, I thought I was going to get coupons for things like maternity wear. I would totally have gone back into the store with my coupon for maternity wear and got myself some cute outfits. That is an investment in myself. I planned to have more than one child, so I knew that those outfits were going to be used more than once, and I wanted to look cute. Now, particularly now, if I was to get pregnant, I've already started looking at my clothes and been like, what's going to work for maternity wear and what pieces would I need to add to my collection? But when you're a new mom, of course, you're thinking, oh, I just have to get all this stuff. And you're not thinking long term. And I'm going to invite you to start thinking long term. And I just want to say right now that part of the empowered birth philosophy is that if you have a question, you can just reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. Or if you are subscribed to the newsletter, you just hit reply to any of the emails. That then tips me off that you are a subscriber, therefore you are priority, and I can get back to you within 1 to 2 business days. So if anything is resonating for you and you want to know more about shopping tips as a new mom, I can give that to you as well. I can add a masterclass, I can create a PDF, I can create a report, because I'm really committed to you having information. Information is free. You only pay for access to me. And the first level of access is just putting your name and email in and getting on the newsletter. But other than that, I have no attachment to anything else. Whereas these formula companies that are putting out these new mom packages and the stores that are also reinforcing this because they're probably getting kickbacks from those formula companies to promote the stuff because they're selling that formula in their store and they're like, hey, if you do this, then we're going to then cross promote you with our stuff. And then it's like this never ending cycle of consumerism, but you as the consumer get trapped because now you've got all these formula samples. So the formula samples, they first come in, you get some coupons. And you don't have the baby yet, so you're not going to use those, but you will use them in the future, is what their idea is. And they're going to also maybe send you some ideas like on email. If they got your email, they're now sending you things through the email that's going to help you understand, oh, wait a minute, what if my baby doesn't get enough milk? Oh, I might need formula. And then they slowly advertise. They even do this with natural birth, where they will like slip things in to make you think that you're going to have difficulty breastfeeding later. Every single article that you read, there is an intention behind it. So sometimes if something is being used as a paid advertisement, it's in article form and you don't know that. So again, Dr. Jack Newman's Guide to Breastfeeding actually does talk about this in the first few chapters. So I do suggest you go and read that if you want the deeper dive. I'll probably also do some videos about this in the future because I am committed to you having an empowered birth and an empowered postpartum and an empowered motherhood. Because when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and nobody can take your power away from you again. And I want you to be your own best expert when it comes to your baby and your body and what you need. And I want you to be able to call in what you need. So by doing this, by giving you this information and telling you what's really going on, what I want you to really take away from this is that there's an intention here. There's always an intention. And are you going to invite that energy in, or are you going to say no to it? And if you are going to invite some of that energy in, what are you inviting in, and what are you going to be on the lookout for? This is also another way of saying the aim for true natural birth and pull back only as needed. So in this case, it's aiming for breastfeeding, exclusive breastfeeding, and only pulling back as needed and getting that right education again. So it's going to reinforce your mindset and not trigger your fears. And you need to have the right facilitators for that in the right environment. So if you've got these formula samples around, this is one of the things that really bugs me about the mom groups is like, keep the formula samples and take the cans of formula that come in the new mom packages, because you never know. What if you're breastfeeding and it doesn't go well, and now you're going to have that on hand rather than have to rush to the store to get it. Here's why you don't want to do that, though. See, we get to a point, and it's usually about the third day. The milk starts coming in. It's no longer colostrum, and baby starts to have a little bit of problems. My daughter had this too. So even though I had a very successful, easy breastfeeding time with my son, when I discovered I had the oversupply with him and I started to get very, very full of milk, I still had those problems in the beginning, but I resolved them because I didn't have any formula on hand. I was willing to pump, I was willing to hand express, and I was willing to keep going at it. Whereas if that formula had been there, I had family that was kind of staying in the area. They had a hotel and they came during the day. They might have given a bottle of formula and they'd been like, oh, well, it's okay. No, it's not. And here is why it's not. Okay, so breastfeeding, if you're not already aware of this, and again, Dr. Jack Newman's Guide to Breastfeeding talks about this deeper. Breastfeeding is based on supply and demand, which means in the first few hours after your baby is born, your baby needs to be latched at the breast and skin to skin, and they need to do it themselves. They can't be shoved on because that is trauma. This is another reason why circumcision isn't a good idea. I'm just going to say that. I don't believe in circumcision unless there's an actual medical issue where that is the only option, because this is a very sensitive organ and sensitive tissue. And there's a whole bunch of problems. But circumcised baby boys, they start out when they're intact, they're able to breastfeed fine. And then they've been going through this traumatic event, and it is traumatic, and then they're in pain. And then they don't want to breastfeed. They don't latch on. Now there's problems. So you need to recognize that this is also tied in. If you have a baby boy and you circumcise, there is a chance that the breastfeeding relationship is going to get sabotaged from that. Same thing with traumatic births. If your baby has had a lot of head trauma because maybe they were pulled out with forceps or with the vacuum, maybe they weren't put to your chest right away, maybe they were separated from you, maybe they just went through something horrible, or you went through something and you aren't able to bond with them very well at the start, what happens is that those precious hours that the baby needed to be able to latch are gone. And after about an hour or so, the baby gets sleepy and goes to sleep. So if you go back into the history and look at this, we have a whole history of babies that were separated from their mothers, sometimes for 12 hours after birth, and then they'd come on hungry and they wouldn't be able to latch properly. So recognizing where this is coming from, this idea, when people say, well, you're going to have problems breastfeeding and you need to have formula on hand just in case. That is based on a perception from our culture of fear that's been passed on through our culture, basically with the perpetuating of formula being pushed. So recognizing that breastfeeding has been undermined for a very long time, and a lot of people now assume they can't do it. If you don't have the formula on hand, you are more likely to solve the problem and be more patient. Or other people won't undermine it. They won't say, well, she's been trying everything, I'm just going to give a bottle. Because the second that bottle is introduced, the baby is now full up on formula. They are not taking the milk at the breast, which means you then have to pump that milk out, but it's not going to be the same mechanics of your baby latching, which means it's not going to help you increase your milk supply as much as if your baby was at the breast, because your baby also has saliva, and the saliva is then absorbed into your skin that indicates to your body what you need to be adding to your breast milk. This is so much bigger than just having enough milk. This is about having the right consistency of that milk. So even if you're exclusively pumping, and I'm not going to make you wrong for that, you need to be aware of what is lost when you're doing that. And you need to also recognize what you're going to want to do to make it a lot easier, especially if you do need to supplement with formula. But aim for breastfeeding and pull back only as needed, and get that right education, have the right environment that's supportive of breastfeeding, and have the right facilitators. You don't want the doctor who gets their information about breastfeeding from the seminar that was taught by or funded by a formula company. And again, Dr. Jack Newman's Guide to Breastfeeding talks about this. So you need to recognize that. Now, what do you do instead? Well, if you get those samples, maybe somebody else signed you up for a new mom package that you weren't aware of, or maybe it came through something else that you signed up for that you didn't really realize that they sold your information to the formula companies. Then you get those samples, you can donate those to the food bank. This is a beautiful way to give back, because yes, you don't need that formula sample, right? You're not interested in that. You're breastfeeding. But there are moms out there who are lower income, who need to have formula from the food bank to be able to feed their baby because they can't breastfeed. So if you donate to the food banks or you donate to mom shelters, that is going to help them. So recognizing that formula is expensive. And if you don't want to formula feed, if you are committed to breastfeeding, you can still get those samples. I'm not saying don't ever sign up for the new mom packages, but if you're going to do it, be discerning and have a plan in place, because you are going to get those formula samples. You are going to get those cans of formula. You're going to get the next steps up. In fact, I signed up for so many lists and I kept getting formula samples and like toddler drinks and things that would just come in the mail for me. And this was going on for 3 years. And I was like, I don't need any of this stuff, but I'm going to give it to the food bank. So I did give back. And as for coupons, you can't give the coupons to the food bank, but moms online, They appreciate that. I used to go into the mom groups and I'd be like, hey, who wants these? Who in the area would be willing to come to my house and just pick up these coupons? And by the way, I also have some baby stuff that my child has outgrown. Would you like it? And they just come and they get it. So recognizing that if we as moms all support each other and all are like, I have an abundance of this thing, but I don't actually even need this thing. I don't use this thing. It just came to me. Maybe somebody gave it to me in a baby shower, but I don't need it. Instead of trying to sell it or just toss it out or put it in the back of the closet, what if we just started like our own little mom swap online and gave it out in the community? That would take the load off, wouldn't it? And, part of the empowered mom philosophy is pay it forward. In fact, all of the information I put out for free because I want you to pay it forward. I want it to be accessible. I want to pass it on. So to recap, if you are getting the new mom packages, you are going to get formula. You are going to get formula coupons. You're going to get formula samples. Do not think that you're not going to get that, because you are. So have a plan in place to get it out of your house so that nobody is tempted to give that to your baby. Because if they give it to your baby, especially in the first 6 weeks, that is messing with your supply and demand, which is then going to cause you problems. And maybe you do pump and your baby's fine, but it can be really easy to get mastitis. I actually got it when my daughter was 15 months, just because she'd been away from me all day and I had hand expressed and I was not as full as I was at the beginning. And I still got mastitis after 6 hours. It was terrible. So if you want to avoid that, you need to be aware of how fast your breasts will fill up with milk again, because it's anticipating that your baby needs that feed. If you don't do anything with that, then your body is told to make less milk. And over time, you're constantly making less milk. And it's really hard to get back. So it's better to have the abundance and then give it out than it is to try to make it back. So again, recognize that. The other thing this leads me into is number 2. Bottles and pacifiers are notoriously inside of these new mom packages. If you have a bottle and a pacifier, this now reinforces the idea that you'll be bottle feeding at some point and you're going to use a pacifier. This leads to nipple confusion, especially in babies that have a shallow latch. My son had absolutely no problems. So he could go from the breast to the pacifier and back again and no issues. He was able to do it. My daughter, on the other hand, I had to get rid of all the pacifiers. I had to be like, no, we can't give her a pacifier for at least another couple of weeks because she has such a shallow latch and she has such difficulty latching on that I don't want her confused. I don't want her to be reliant on anything. No, we are not giving a bottle. No, instead, what I'm going to do, since I'm donating my milk anyway, is I'm going to hand express to get as much out as humanly possible. Also getting rid of the watery milk first so that what's left is the hind milk. That's the fatty milk. So that my daughter, when she suddenly latches on, first, the breast is not as full, so she's able to actually get her mouth on the nipple and onto the areola. And now she's able to do that, and the milk's not going to automatically spray into her mouth because she hated that, and she'd pull off and get upset. So my milk had to not be spraying, and it couldn't be this overflow. And there was one breast that she liked better than the other. So I unfortunately was a little lopsided. And then what happened is that she grew and she was able to do it. And then once that happened, she was able to have her pacifiers. But you don't want to start with that. And again, when you get that bottle and that pacifier, that then reinforces to other people around you, oh, we've got this pacifier. The baby is like wanting to latch all the time and use you as a human pacifier. So let's just give them a regular pacifier. No. The thing is that there are points during your baby's growth and during your breastfeeding journey where your baby is going to use you as a human pacifier. And there is a reason for that. Babies are going to want to latch on at certain times of night, and they're going to do it more frequently. And at nighttime, what happens is that's when your milk supply is increasing the most. If your baby is on the breast all night, that's going to signal to your body to make more milk for this growing baby. So your baby is going through cluster feeding. And yes, the baby is going to be on the breast the whole time. Make sure you've got lots of water. Make sure you've got a nice place to camp out and relax, and just expect to be chilling out with your baby on those days, because that is going to allow your baby to get the most milk. It's going to allow your breasts to adjust to the new supply and demand. And then you're not going to have as many breastfeeding issues. But so many people are like, oh, baby's fussy on this day, I'll give a bottle. And this reinforces the whole culture and idea that breastfeeding is this difficult thing and that you're going to have to supplement, which the formula companies want you to think, because again, they want to sell you formula. Which leads to number 3 of why you don't want to sign up for these new mom packages, is that they often add helpful literature, helpful being in quotation marks, because this helpful literature about what to expect at certain milestones of your baby's growth and how much your baby is eating is undermining your baby's natural process. No. Not all babies are ready for solid food right at 6 months. My daughter was not interested until 7 months. Now, I still sat her at the table and I was breastfeeding, but you offer breastfeeding first, and then you supplement with food. And this is where it's backwards, because a lot of people are like, give them solid foods first and then finish with breastfeeding. No. If you are looking to exclusively breastfeed for a year and then still continue your breastfeeding for 2.5 years, then you want to do baby-led weaning. And that means breastfeeding first and then sitting there at the table with them at meal times and offering them little bits of food. But otherwise, you're breastfeeding. And recognizing you don't want to be giving bottles, and no, you don't need to have a feeding schedule. You don't need to be paying attention to the ounces in the bottle, because that again is formula culture. Formula ounces are different than breastfeeding. Your breasts are making different types of milk. There is the fore milk, which is more watery, and then there's the hind milk. Your baby is oftentimes getting the watery stuff if they're not getting a full feed. That is to keep them hydrated, because they're not getting water. The fore milk is their water. So they are thirsty. They're not just hungry, they are thirsty. And then if they latch off before the hind milk comes in, then that just means they just wanted some water. They just wanted a drink. So recognizing that your body actually is very intelligent. Your baby is very intelligent. But our culture undermines this with these new mom packages and this helpful information that is then designed to say, is your baby getting enough milk? And Dr. Jack Newman again talks about this in chapter 3 of his book, Dr. Jack Newman's Guide to Breastfeeding. He talks about how these articles are worded to give you that question, that panic, am I actually making enough milk? And this is why a lot of moms end up stopping breastfeeding or supplementing, because they think they're not making enough milk. So if you really want to protect that breastfeeding relationship, then here are some tips if you do choose to sign up for these new mom packages. Because, hey, sometimes the samples are great. Sometimes there are things that you might want, but definitely not the nipple cream. Honestly, I didn't need nipple cream at all with my son. I needed a little bit with my daughter because she had such a bad latch, and I corrected it because I also had a lactation consultant that I went to within the second day that I was noticing these problems were arising. And I always tell my clients within their postpartum plan to have those consultants in their backup for postpartum so that they know, oh, this is the person I'm going to. Instead of trying to frantically find someone at the last minute, they plan ahead. So again, recognizing planning ahead is probably the first tip that I can give you is plan ahead. Plan when you get those new mom packages to see, well, what are you really going to use? And anything you're not going to use, give away. And also plan that you're probably going to be on an email list. Plan ahead to see what's coming in and unsubscribe. Unsubscribe from anything that doesn't seem to resonate with you. You don't need to worry about fear of missing out. Okay? The information is still out there. If you really need to call it in, it will be there for you. You don't need to worry about that. Hi, Kat. So when you recognize that information, while helpful, if you're not calling in the right information, it's just information overwhelm. You don't go to a library and take out every single book on birth. You go to the library and you find the natural birth books. And then within the natural birth books, you're looking for specific things. Is this true natural birth, or is this natural birth perpetuated by the medical system and our birth culture that's actually going to lead you into a trap? If you don't know the difference, then go check some of my other videos because I lay it out for you. So understanding, first of all, what are you really calling in and planning ahead for that? The second thing you want to do with these new mom packages, aside from planning ahead, is recognizing that you're just going to get a bunch of stuff. You're better off signing up for something with coupons than getting a bunch of stuff. If you need stuff, you can call that in by asking other moms. You know, especially when we get to a certain point in our journey, like 6 months in, our babies are popping out of their clothes left, right, and center. Some of them, we buy the clothes and the tags are still attached. Our baby never got to wear them. Instead of relying on these new mom free packages where you put your name and email in, why not go into local mom groups and mom communities and find out who's giving away what? And then as your baby gets bigger, do the same, pay it forward. Get that stuff out of your house, because when you let something out, you bring new stuff in that's more aligned to what you need. Now, maybe you want to save it for a few years because you are having another one. Maybe you're planning a bigger family. Absolutely do that. At the same time, there's going to be things that you don't need that you can realize, oh, that really wasn't a good purchase. I can get rid of it. And that will save you some money and some time and some energy to be able to just get it out of there. And finally, one more tip I have for the new mom packages is that when you're going into the stores and you're just giving away your email and recognize that they might sell your information to somebody else, just be aware of that. Maybe pass that on to other moms, because if they know about it, they're not as likely to get into those traps. So that's my tips on the new mom packages. And as I said, free stuff is great, and just be discerning and make sure that you're only taking what you need out of that and giving out the rest. Give it away. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't need that I gave away. I gave away samples. I gave away coupons. I gave away like baby stuff that I didn't need. The bottles were out of my house as soon as they came in because I didn't want any bottles in my house. And by doing that, I was able to have a much more peaceful motherhood, especially the second time around, because I got rid of 90% of the baby gadgets that I'd had with my son when I had my daughter. And instead, I invested in other things. So the final thing that I'm going to say is that if you're going to invest your time, your email, your attention, your money even into something, instead of investing in stuff, invest in yourself. Invest in your future. Invest in your children. Invest in the things that are going to be long-term. Think long term. What kind of mom do you want to be? What kind of childhood do you want your children to have? What kind of motherhood experience do you want? You don't have to be mommy martyr. You can absolutely create your own motherhood experience. You don't have to do what everybody else tells you to do. You don't have to supplement. You don't have to get the bottle for other people to feed the baby. You don't have to sign up for all of the mom stuff. You don't have to get all the baby gadgets. You can do things your way. And the best investment that you can have is in yourself. And I even tell my clients this is part of why the empowered birth method is basically free, is because I would rather you put that money towards a coach or a doula or childbirth classes that are actually going to help you and reinforce your mindset and your community and be able to give you more of what you need rather than just blanket information. My information is free. You pay for access to me. So if you need support, I want you to be able to get that support and use the information that I give you to enhance that. So by understanding what you're calling in and what you're saying yes to, you're also saying no to something else. If you say yes to the formula samples and keep them in your house, you may be saying no to breastfeeding. You may be saying no to exclusively breastfeeding. Maybe not. However, there is a real possibility based on what has been going on in our birth culture, what I've seen in the mom groups over the last decade, what I continue to see out there, what keeps getting pushed. And there's no money to be made in exclusively breastfeeding unless they can convince you to also buy a breast pump and the nipple cream and the gadgets for breastfeeding. But really, all you need is your boob and your baby and some time and space to be able to breastfeed. And our society and our culture is also not supportive of the breastfeeding relationship, which means that, again, as the strong advocate for yourself, you need to be able to say no. And you need to be able to use the tools that you learn with the empowered birth method to then keep that breastfeeding relationship with your baby, even when society is telling you you're doing things wrong. Sleep training is another big one when it comes to undermining the breastfeeding relationship. As I mentioned, most of the milk supply happens and increases at night. And milk composition is different at night from what it is in the daytime. So if you're not breastfeeding, this can again mess with the baby's sleep schedule. And if you aren't breastfeeding at night, this can again keep your baby awake. I bed share and I do it safely because I understand how to do it safely. Again, calling in the information. It's not black and white. You have to be aware of that. It's not black and white. There are going to be people on one side saying it's perfectly safe and other people telling you it's super dangerous and never do it. You want to be able to meet in the middle and find what works for you and your family and call that in and ignore what other people have to say about it. You can take that information with a grain of sand or a grain of salt, and you can be like, okay, they're saying this. Does this feel true for me? Well, it feels a little scary. I'm going to create a plan around that. So again, when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take your power away from you again, because the empowered birth method is so versatile that you can use it to transform all aspects of your life and your motherhood so that you can feel more confident in your motherhood. And all you have to do is go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and that will get you the overview of true natural birth, the mistakes you're making as a first-time mom, seasoned mom, VBAC mom, the overview of the empowered birth method, how you can go deeper with it, the 3 paths to working with me, and the philosophy of the empowered birth method as well, because I am committed to you having an empowered birth. You deserve to have an empowered birth. You deserve to have a joyful, empowered postpartum. You deserve to have your breastfeeding relationship with your baby, and you deserve to have an empowered motherhood. As an empowered mom for life, you now become the leader of your family. You become the leader of the next generation. You're inspiring your children and your partner and everyone around you to have a more joyful and confident experience of motherhood or fatherhood, or just having a more authentic life is really what the empowered birth method does. So I took the same 5 pillars and I applied it to other areas of my life. And that is how I've been able to show up strong. It's how I created my business. EmpoweringMomsBirth.com is part of it. And how I was able to go from shy little wallflower, afraid to speak up, to now teaching for you. And I do motherhood my way. I do life my way. And because of that, I'm fearless. And because I am fearless, I'm able to stand up for you, because you might not know how to speak up yet, but with the empowered birth method, you will. So thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, pass this on to other moms who may be wanting to breastfeed so that they don't get trapped by these new mom packages. And as I said, I also have been sprinkling in information that will teach you more about breastfeeding as I was doing this. Because another thing with my master classes is you don't just get surface level information. I go deep on everything you need to know to plan and get your true natural birth and to have a more empowered motherhood experience, and to ensure that your priorities are protected and that you aren't tricked by our overall society and medical system and our birth culture and the culture of fear and mommy martyr syndrome. You break free of all of that. You become an empowered mom for life. And all you have to do is watch the video all the way to the end. Every single week, I put another deep dive masterclass in on another topic within the list of, well, this one is 26 things you need to know if this is your first time planning a true natural birth. There's also playlists that you get the entire set of masterclasses. I don't put those behind a paywall. You can just go through them. If you want to work with me deeper, there is a path to get there. You go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, learn about the Empowered Birth newsletter, learn about the premium coaching and our self-study method of your Empowered Birth Academy, which again, you get everything because information is free. You only pay for access to me. So thank you so much for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Pay it forward if you found this helpful. And I will talk to you soon. Namaste.